Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, June 30th, 2024, and today we are going to be talking about Joe Biden's presidential campaign and how his campaign has set to course correct following a detrimental performance at the Thursday presidential debate. The Democratic Party has been insistent for the past couple of weeks now that Joe Biden is their nominee, but after Thursday, many people have been coming forward asking, is it time to replace the president at the top of the ticket? Is it time to substitute him for somebody like Vice President Harris or Governor Gretchen Whitmer or other names that have been floating all across the political universe? But after the Thursday debate, the Democratic Party leadership and many of those governors that have been cited as potentially replacement nominees for Joe Biden have come out in full force rallying behind the incumbent president of the United States. The Democratic Party has reiterated multiple times, including the Biden campaign now commenting on news stories and publications like the ones from NBC News that are speculating that Biden might drop down from the top of the ticket, reiterating that he is the nominee and will be on the ballot this coming November. And so with all this being kept in mind, that Biden is in fact going to be this Democratic nominee, there seems to be no reality in which Biden does step down and decide to go ahead and move over to the side to allow someone else to take the top of the ticket position. The Biden campaign is now questioning, how do they reset this campaign? And they've laid out a strategy that provides more context as to how the Democratic nominee and how President Biden himself and his party and his campaign team plan to change the trajectory of this race despite the campaign's performance this past Thursday. Now, this speculation around President Biden, I first have to say, really isn't anything new. This is an article back in February published by Jonathan Martin in Politico where he titles it, "Get Used to It. Biden Isn't Going Anywhere." And the reason for that was because earlier on in this year, as we got right into the primary season, a lot of Democrats were speculating, not a lot, but a considerable amount of Democrats were speculating, will there be a primary challenger? Will there be a time in which Biden ends up facing off against the wrong Democrat and ends up losing the renomination? Obviously, that didn't end up happening. He trounced all of his opponents, including Congressman Dean Phillips, in the Democratic primary. But there was that question being raised because President Biden's age has been a well-known factor since he ran for president back in 2020. And so, while I am not here to say that all the speculation around Biden was as large in February, January of this year as it is today, it is probably at its peak that it has ever been at in this election or even the 2020 election. It has been something that both campaigns, Trump, Biden, Democratic campaigns, Democratic staffers, the DNC, the Biden campaign have all taken into consideration that President Biden is, in fact, the oldest president we've had in U.S. history, would be the oldest president ever reelected or elected in the first place, and it also just so happens to be that President Biden has been insistent that despite his age, he is up to the challenge to run for president and to serve out another term. And so that's where we are going to get into really just what the Democratic Party is now doing post-debate to reorient where they are and get back on track. Because right now, the post-debate poll numbers don't look too hot. 3 new polls show Donald Trump making an advantage based on the last poll taken prior to the debate. Morning Consult is a bit of an anomaly. They say Biden actually gained a point from the debate. I'm going to tell you in full honesty, I don't trust that poll, but I do have some takeaways from it that I think can help reveal a bit why, even if Biden is the nominee, I do still think he has a very, very interesting shot at the presidency because a lot of people are saying that this campaign is said and done for. And I want to say this, and I will make a more fleshed out response to this later in today's video, in another video. But Biden's campaign is by far not over. I think we are severely overestimating the idea that this election is somehow going to be one and done through the debate. Because we have 4 months out until the election. We have another presidential debate. We have both nominating conventions. We don't even have a vice presidential nominee for the Republican Party. And this type of overconfidence, because I can tell you, probably somebody watching me, probably laughing at me, thinking that I'm entirely in the wrong here because they're supporting Donald Trump. I will tell you this now. Underestimate Joe Biden at your own peril because it's exactly what they did in 2020. That's exactly what other Democrats did in 2022, not just Republicans, and it has almost always been to your detriment. I am fully aware that President Biden is not in a strong position to win the presidency today, and that's why in my prediction tomorrow, you will see Donald Trump win that presidential election prediction, because if the election was held today, Donald Trump wins. But the election is not today. It's 4.5 months out, and we're also in a point too, where going forward, there will be many more opportunities for Biden to rebound, and I'm telling you now, if this election ends up going for President Biden, there are going to be serious questions about this level of overconfidence that Republicans have exhibited because of debates like this, because of circumstances like this one. When Donald Trump's senior campaign manager, people like Chris LaSavita, have treated this election like it's a done deal, and now even publicly are saying it's a done deal, that is not the sign of a winning campaign. Because going into election 4 months out and saying there's no chance that Biden wins is exactly how you end up losing. Moving back to the point, again, Donald Trump does well today. And that's why these new polls show some type of improvement for Donald Trump. I don't really trust the Lager poll. I will be entirely honest with you. They are a C-minus rated pollster, and I rarely will ever even consider them as part of a factor in an average, in an overall narrative here. But I think maybe it could provide some interesting context. I'm more interested in the Data for Progress survey that went from Biden +1 to Trump +3, a 4-point swing. I'm interested in the Survey USA poll that went from a tie to Trump +2. That's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in some of these polls that show Biden losing ground, because I think that's what actually happened at the debate. I think he has started to see a decline in support nationally because people are now questioning, is he mentally fit to be the next president of the United States? Should he be the nominee to be the next president of the United States? And these are considerations that voters are having, but Democrats and Republicans seem to be adamant too that Biden is going to be the nominee. Donald Trump himself just doesn't seem to be piling on to whether or not he should be the nominee, whether or not Biden should be the nominee. And so when we talk about this, line of questioning, Donald Trump, coming into this race as someone who is very adamant he wanted to face up against Biden, has not changed that. And I think the debate actually reinforced some of the beliefs that Donald Trump had about President Biden. But again, I want to say that there are times where President Biden really does well. And should that happen in the next debate or at the convention, because he does really well with teleprompters and scripted speeches, just not on a debate stage, I think we will find that there will be some type of convention bump. There will be a change in the race. But again, that's all speculative. Let's talk about what the Biden campaign is actually doing to go ahead and repair their perception amongst the American public, President Biden's perception. And so we're going to get into that. First things first, the Democratic nominee for president, President Biden, has been very clear. He has addressed that he does not debate as well as he used to, and that's probably the most you will get out of a Democratic campaign in acknowledgement of what happened on Thursday. And I think, arguably, it makes a lot of sense. President Biden hasn't shied away in recent advertisements, in recent mailers, in his strategy, has not shied away from the idea that he is an older man, that he is someone who, again, as he says in the speech, does not speak as well as he used to or as easily as he used to, doesn't walk as easily as he used to, doesn't debate as well as he used to. But he reiterated that with one fiery point. And if you watch the clip, you'll see Biden in an entirely different light than what he was perceived as on Thursday. And that was the fact that he tells the truth. And so I think that is something that voters seem to have cared about a little bit more. And I'll talk about that too, because we're going to look at the morning consult poll, because I think it provides, again, that important context as to how you could possibly see Biden gaining post-debate, even if the performance was far from impressive. And so when we see data like this one, where the morning consult poll showed Biden gaining a point, again, I'm not trusting the numbers that show Biden gaining support. I'm interested to see what these voters had to say about the debate. An electorate that is choosing Biden by one after the debate, what it says about the electorate, what they say about the nominee, what they say about potentially replacing the nominee, because it provides us with, a different lens to look at this from. So they asked the voters, should President Biden be or not be replaced as the Democratic nominee for president? So they ask amongst all voters, they ask amongst Democrats, independents, Republicans, and they break it down by those who watched the debate and those who did not watch the debate. And the difference isn't too heavy. Amongst all voters, 60% say that Joe Biden should be replaced as the Democratic nominee for president. 29% say no. Amongst all voters who watched, the number goes up to 63 to 27. Keep this in mind. 63% of the electorate here that says Joe Biden should be replaced as the nominee is choosing him by 1 point over Donald Trump. That's an interesting point. Again, throwing away the Biden +1 number as an overall headline, but understanding that this is the same group of people that are saying they want Biden by 1 point, but equally 2/3 of them are saying that Biden should be replaced as the nominee. The more interesting number here is amongst Democrats, where 50% of Democrats who watched the debate and 47% of Democrats overall say Biden should be replaced as the nominee. Well, there was a primary. Why didn't they vote? No prominent Democrat decided to run in that primary, and there was a reason for that. There has always been consideration in years past about replacing potential nominees. There are countless articles from 2012 about replacing Barack Obama with Hillary Clinton, and I don't think these are two comparable elections. But the idea that there have never been Democrats who have questioned whether the nominee should go on to run for re-election is not new to this election. However, this is a very high number. 50% of Democrats saying Biden should step down and be replaced as the nominee for president tells you a lot. But it equally tells you a lot when 62% of independents are saying the same exact thing, and yet Biden still comes out ahead in a head-to-head matchup. It's fascinating the way that some of these polls work and the way that the American public works. But a lot of it has to do with the way that the Republican Party made Joe Biden seem to be, not mentally fit for the past 4 years. The Republican line of strategy to beat Biden in a re-election has plainly really just been go after the way that he talks, go after some of his, what they dub as senior moments. And Biden's campaign has now started to lean into that. And that has started to be part of their one step of a many-step strategy to change the trajectory of this race. They're acknowledging his age, but also coupling it with experience. In talking about how he is the oldest nominee for president, he talks about how he was the youngest U.S. senator at the time. 50 years in the U.S. Senate, 2 terms as vice president, now a term as president. Joe Biden is pushing into this as an experience point. But it isn't just that. They are going into that second line about how Joe Biden has been consistently underestimated. Remember that New York Times opinion piece from just 2 days ago saying to serve his country, President Biden should leave the race? This is the same New York Times editorial board that didn't think Biden would get past Iowa, that didn't think Biden and his campaign, even if it was running on fumes, would even win South Carolina. And yet, they were proven wrong. Biden has been consistently underestimated by the mainstream media, by political pundits, because at face value, a candidate like him, based on what we see with approval rating, based on what we see with, election performance in 2008 when he ran for president, in 1988 when he ran for president, they were saying, there's no chance that this guy wins the presidency. There's no chance he even wins the nomination, and it happened. And then in the midterms, they said there's no chance Biden is unpopular, he's dragging down the Democratic Party, and didn't. There's a line of questioning here for the media about how much they actually estimate Joe Biden to do well in versus not, because a lot of the times they are wrong. So it comes into this. Acknowledging his age and experience is a big thing. Emphasizing his underdog status by taking on places like the New York Times. And you're finding that some other publications are making contrarian opinions from their editorial board. The Philadelphia Inquirer, which is the state's largest paper, says to serve his country, Donald Trump should leave the race. This is the editorial board of Pennsylvania's largest newspaper. The New York Times is arguably the country's largest newspaper. But the New York Times has no regional impact, no regional sway. The Philadelphia Inquirer does. However, not to say that this is somehow going to sway voters to Joe Biden, I think it starts to show that there is a bit of resistance in the media to lean into this extreme narrative that somehow this entire procedure of a Democratic primary and a Democratic system can be uprooted, because in many states too, Biden can't just be replaced by a nominee. Some swing states won't allow Biden's name to just be swapped out by whoever decides to be moved up on the nomination spot. This is a question that could have been raised and has been raised, sure, but not to the same extent. That could have been raised to the same extent months ago that might have actually genuinely caused some reconsideration. But the 2022 midterms are really what pushed President Biden to run for re-election. Moments after we saw Democrats do much, much, much better than expected, it pretty much proved all the naysayers wrong. And that's what President Biden might be trying to do this time around. And I'm not here to try to speculate as him or as someone, who's looking at this from that lens. I just genuinely do believe that what we have seen in the media over the past 2 days is largely in line with what we saw after the Democratic primary performances for President Biden. And I don't think they are directly comparable situations, but I do think they have very interesting similarities. And I don't think the media speculating around this is what is going to sway Biden or the Democratic Party to reconsider this. Another thing, too, that we're starting to see from the Biden campaign is that they're going to do more campaign travel, more media appearances. When headlines like this one, where Biden seeks to repair debate with fiery speech, it causes people to watch the speech. If you watch that speech in North Carolina, that will show you a Biden who I think can win this election. The question is, does he keep that up? Momentum is, built time and time again. It can't just be one good performance and 3 bad ones, or 3 good performances and 1 bad one. It needs to be good, maybe a dip, and then good again, because that's how you win a campaign. It is consistent travel. It is consistent public appearances. It is consistent media appearances. Doing well in an interview that is publicized to tens of millions of viewers. Doing well at a convention speech that tens of millions of viewers will be watching. Doing better at the next debate. Speaking as well as he did at the North Carolina speech, at every speech. That's what is necessary to win a presidential election, and they know this. So, 3 things now. Emphasizing underdog status, acknowledging age and experience, and now increasing campaign travel and media appearances to get more headlines out there. Biden is fiery. Biden is fired up. Biden is ready to go. All of those things are what the Democratic Party wants, because it quells donors, it quells campaign supporters, it quells everyone's fears. But of course, this starts at the candidate. And so Biden himself will need to do that. The last thing we started to see the campaign do, and I think, this is mentioned throughout the LA Times article, about how in order to course correct, in order to make a direct oppositional campaign, rather than making this fundamentally pro-Biden, it's about contrasting his values with Trump and Trump's perceived vanity and vindictiveness. When you see some of these post-debate polls, you might be wondering if you support Trump or if you're an independent who leans right. A lot of people are asking, quote tweeting polls, tweets like this one, how is Trump only ahead by 2 and 3? Fake news, fake polls. Donald Trump's debate performance wasn't that strong. In fact, it's probably Donald Trump's least, or worst campaign performance since 2016. It was just overshadowed by the fact that Joe Biden lost the presidential debate. But it cannot be understood more clearly than by independent voters who watch this from a lens that, yes, Biden is old, but he's better than Trump, who look at this and say, Trump is vindictive. The things that Trump said, it's all about vanity. It's all about metrics that just don't exist. We had the best air. We had the best water. What does that even mean? Because these are things that voters look to and say, it's not policy. It's not substance. It's not something that I want out of a presidential nominee. And that isn't to say that they adore Joe Biden. But a lot of this is about oppositional campaigning. It's not about being pro-Biden to some of these voters. It's about being anti-Trump. If this was a campaign against Nikki Haley, this election would be wrapped up and said and done for. Because Democrats know that there are far, far better Republican nominees for president than President Trump. But that's not where we are. Donald Trump is the only person who has ever lost to Joe Biden in a presidential election. Joe Biden is also the only Democrat who has ever beaten Donald Trump in a presidential election. And while the margins may have been narrow, and I fully expect them to be even narrower in this upcoming election, it has to be understood that this election is going to be close, and Biden still has a very strong chance at victory, even if he does not, especially considering that they are now rallying behind him. The more the Democrats panic, and the more publicly that they get out against President Biden, the more damage it actually does to the presidential campaign. And I think they've started to realize that. I also think when you look at this from the perspective of who has actually beaten Trump before, Democrats emphasize again that Biden is the only one who has done it, and they believe that he is the only one who can do it. Of course, they may be wrong. This coming November, Donald Trump may be reelected for his second term in the White House, and maybe all of this will have been completely just the wrong decision from the Democratic campaign. But this is where we are, and American politics is almost entirely about dealing with the cards that you are dealt with. And that's what the Democratic campaign, and that is what Biden and his campaign want to emphasize. Biden may not be perfect for many of these voters. He may not align on the majority of issues for some of these swing voters, but he's better than Trump in their eyes. That is how Democrats are trying to position this campaign. He may not do well at debates, but he tells the truth. He may not do well at debates, but he has the facts. He may not do well at debates, but he has the experience. Those are the ways the Democrats are trying to get back on track, trying to reset and course correct this campaign after the Thursday debate, because they know they need it, and so does everybody else. So, full summary here. Increasing campaign travel and media appearances, emphasizing underdog status, the idea that Biden is consistently underestimated by the mainstream media, by the pundits, etc., acknowledging his age, but leaning into experience, and contrasting his values of truth and the facts with Trump's perceived vanity and vindictiveness. That is how Democrats are trying to make this a campaign not necessarily about Biden, but almost entirely around Trump, and that Biden is better, even by a margin, which may be enough to sway some voters in some battleground states. However, final note, today, Donald Trump wins the election. That's where Biden's campaign is recognizing that this is not their campaign, and that is super strong. This is not a campaign, as of today, that can win this election right now, but can this coming November. And that's what they're focusing on. There is still a lot of time until the presidential votes are cast. 51 million viewers is the lowest we've seen on a presidential debate since George W. Bush and John Kerry's third presidential debate in 2004. I understand clips and social media take things up and get them far, far and wide, but that's also just part of the new campaign style. But it isn't to say that there has been a dip in TV viewership. There has been a dip in overall conversation around, what actual substance was there at the debate, which means there is time for more substance and more policy and more oppositional campaign work to be done by both sides of the aisle, but primarily by the Biden team, to go ahead and move beyond where we are right now when it comes down to this election, move beyond this presidential debate and move forward into the election. Potentially tomorrow with a Supreme Court decision around immunity, it may completely shake up where we are in national perception, in national discourse. Again, depending on how the SCOTUS rules, it could really have huge impacts for this election and completely change what we're talking about today. Biden campaign may be relying on that, but also too has their four-pronged strategy to go ahead and work forward in this campaign reset as they get closer to November. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already. And at the top left of the screen, there's a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. Check out the Instagram and Twitter. And at the top right of your screen is a video you can watch. And the bottom right is a playlist of my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.